right. So we do have a quorum. So the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I guess I'm supposed to start it, right? All right. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone in the room other than myself who remembers we used to say this with no under God in the Pledge of Allegiance? I doubt there was because it came in, I think, in 1952. So I didn't expect anybody, but that was added.
Well, even if I did, I wouldn't admit it, Dawn.
Joyce, I was going to say, there's one possibility, but I wouldn't embarrass her in public.
I hope you weren't thinking it was me. That is before me, Dawn.
I was looking in your direction. There was a clock
I
after.
have never seen my hair.
Can you hear
All right,
Yes, Steve, we can hear you.
Very can.
Yes, we can.
I have not heard of any correspondence. That doesn't mean we
I
don't
have
have
to ask
any.
my 11-year-old to help me.
Any public comments from visitors? All right, this is going to be a good evening. We move this quickly. All right, under agenda review, Julie, I would like to ask our gentleman who made application for the school board to join us at the
Thanks,
table.
Ken.
Until you have done your oath, whatever, you can't vote. But I would welcome you as the chair, then if you want to express an opinion, feel comfortable to do that. And if somebody makes a motion that you can't, then you can't, but if they don't make a motion, then.
So for agenda review, we want to move the appointment of the school director from Highgate to right after agenda review here before the consent agenda?
Yes.
All right, do we need a motion for that now?
We need a motion to appoint, and you have to give me the gentleman's name, because I didn't write it down, but
Rennick Darnell Martin.
Martin, I know his last name, so Mr. Martin has filled out an application. I think most of you were introduced to him at the last meeting.
Robert, are you trying to make it so we can hear people?
We are unmuted. You can't hear Dawn?
Now I hear you. I couldn't hear Don.
Where's the
I
microphone?
hear you.
Do you want to move that?
Well, a few times in my life, somebody said they couldn't hear me. Usually they say,
I just heard you.
I'll look your way, Terry. For anyone who's interested, Mr. Martin read a rather lengthy letter verifying that not only is he a good candidate, but he's a parent of a child in the school system, and he brings to us the same goals we have, and that's to provide all children with a high-quality education. So if there are no questions, I take a motion that we appoint him to the one-year term for Highgate, because he will have to be up for re-election if he chooses to stay with us next March. That's not our choice, that's state law. So do I have a motion?
Before we make the motion, I just want to make sure there was no other application and nobody else.
No, there
Okay. I'll make that motion, Don.
Is there a second? Joanne, second? All right. Any further questions? All in favor of the motion as presented? Vote with a voting sign of aye, or raise your hand, or wherever you are. And Julie, I'm going to have you count, but I think all 7 people, there are 7 of us here. It's unanimous, so welcome aboard. And as I say, once you take your oath, then you'll earn your keep.
All right.
This is a paid position, but you don't get paid for it. I think you have to be on job 10 months. That's about right.
I assume it was.
It is me.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
I didn't know that either.
You're not changing your mind.
Oh, no. Money comes straight.
So just so you know, Robert will set you up with an MVSD, and we'll share this whole drive with you, that's for the board, and that's what all this information is set. Okay. So we should probably do that tomorrow.
Yep.
As we're talking about the school board, I am just passing around the code of conduct ethics that you agreed to last time, so that people can sign the back. We'll just pass it around.
Okay, so now you're at the table and we've welcomed you. I want to start. Peter, would you introduce yourself and your school, the school district you represent us all, by your town of residence?
I'm Peter Magnet, and I represent the, well, like you said, everything, but I'm from Franklin, and my kids went through the Franklin School in MVU.
Peter's clerk of the board, I believe.
Yep.
Joanne Johnston, also from Franklin, and my son also went through Franklin and MVU.
And that next chair would be filled by me and and Devin Batchelor was from Franklin, as the chair of the board, would be over here. I'm not the chair of the board. That was in my past. But, yes.
I'm Justina Jeanette. I'm the assistant principal at the Swanton School, and I also have a daughter at Swanton.
I'm Chris Dodge. I'm the principal at Swanton. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you as well.
Hi, I'm Joyce Hakian. I'm the principal at Franklin.
I'm Bonnie Moulton. I'm the Director of Human Resources at Central Office, and I also have a child at Highgate and the MBU.
Okay. Do I introduce myself too? Cool. So I'm Rennick. I have 3 kids at Highgate. Well, 1 at elementary and 2 coming in this year. So that's me.
I'm Laura Callister, I'm the business manager, and I'm also a Swanton resident.
I'm Don Collins and volunteered to be vice chair because I knew nothing would ever happen that I'd have to chair the board. And I live in Swanton, but I represent Franklin, Highgate, and Swanton.
I'm Julie Reginald, superintendent. I also have 2 children who went through school here, and I reside in Swanton.
Robert Jarvis, the Director of Technology.
Tobias, I go like Toby though, McGuire, and I live in Swanton. I live in the MSVD, or Squid Valley School District.
Yes.
Toby.
Up on this, can you hear us to introduce yourselves?
Terry and Steve and Jen.
We met because Rennick came to our board development and goals committee. So Rennick, I have 3 kids that have been through Swanton and MVU.
Stephen?
Unmute, Steve.
How about now?
Good.
No?
Yes.
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 Oh, yeah? Okay, good.
I think that's part of the struggle.
I can feel for him because when I get on Comcast sometimes, in the middle of it goes unstable. All right, let's move over to Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Chevalier. I reside in Highgate. I represent Highgate, and I have 2 students that go to MVU High School, and my granddaughter who lives with me who will be going to Highgate this coming fall.
I think that's everyone. Thank you. All right, we are up to consent agenda, I guess. And the consent agenda, approve the minutes of February 23rd, first off.
I'll make a motion, Don, if you'll accept it, to accept the meeting minutes from February 23rd.
All right, is there a second?
I'll be happy to second it.
Thank you, Terry. So we have a motion, a second. Are there any inquiries or any concerns or omissions? All in favor signify by.
I got a question though.
Oh, okay.
Under the discussion about the budget.
Is this February 23rd, Peter?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, am I on the wrong one?
Yeah.
We're doing February 23rd first. I split them apart.
Oh, I'm all good with that.
I don't know if we're on the wrong one. But,
That was the informational meeting.
That was the informational meeting.
Yeah.
Is that one fine?
okay. All in favor of the informational meeting, February 23rd minutes, say aye and raise your hand or whatever. Julie, help me out. It looks like it's.
Aye.
Okay, so, right. All right, now that I split them up because that's the way I've always done it, I guess, but March 8th meeting, motion to get it on the floor, Toby, a second, anyone second the 8th? That was the meeting, our first our reorganization meeting, the first meeting of the year. Then I need a second from somebody.
Terry.
I'll make it, it's
All right.
Terry.
Okay, now, Peter, I think your question was related to this set of minutes, or am I wrong?
Yeah, if I can find Should have printed it. So in the budget talk, we didn't. I mean, I guess it's fine, but I'm not sure it represented exactly what the discussion was as far as, we talked about the equalized pupil rate and we talked about, lowering that number lower than 9.21. We talked about 7, that's not in here. And then it talked about, cutting positions. I don't think that came from the board. I don't think anybody on the board said that we wanted to cut positions.
Are you saying you don't think anybody on the board said that?
I don't think so.
I don't think I said cut positions. I think I said one thing to look at would be the new positions we've budgeted.
Right. Just think it should be clear we're not talking about cutting.
No, cutting positions.
Right.
And maybe not doing anything, but look at
Current
the positions.
positions, I guess. I don't want people to think that that's what we were projecting.
Good catch, Peter. Thank you.
Is Pierrette on?
Yes. We could,
Yes, I am, and I heard I will change that from looking at the positions instead of cutting.
If I had been the chair, I would have brought that up, but I figured I would. All right. Any other questions about the minutes for March 8th? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving those as corrected or amended, signify by saying aye or raise your hand. 7-0 again. All right, it's time for administrative reports. I read the one from the Highgate principal. Very good. Looks like he's tonight celebrating training.
he's been at the Waddington Leadership Institute all year, and this is their final gathering of the year, so he was unable to join us tonight.
All right.
But please email him if anyone has any questions.
All right. So go ahead. Somebody has a question? Yeah, thanks for helping me. Terry?
Thank you. If you don't mind, I just wanted to say, because I emailed him and talked with him for a little bit, Joshua, and I just thought it was important to bring up that he's done a really great thing. And he said it's really been beneficial to him and it's helped him in his leadership position at Highgate. So he's appreciative and we're appreciative of him. Thanks.
So before we go to elementary reports, as I was flying out the door with my bottle of water, I said to my wife, Susan, I'm chairing the meeting tonight. You may not want to watch it. And she said, just don't be flip. So with that in mind, I went through the introduction I might do tonight when I go for the reports, because we will not start with any criteria. We'll just go with Chris and this way.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. So just a few quick things to highlight from my report. We want to congratulate Pam Hancock, who's a 5th grade teacher at Swanton, for being named the UVM Outstanding Teacher of the Year this year. Pam's worked at Swanton for 25 years in a couple of different positions. She's been in 5th grade for quite a while now, and she's a real asset to our students. So we'll be celebrating Pam tomorrow afternoon at 4:30 in a virtual celebration of her work. And in Friday's Messenger, we'll have a profile of Pam. So we're looking forward to celebrating her hard work. We've also been really excited in the past week or so to bring back some in-person assemblies at Swanton as we get closer to our previous normal. So we had the MVU Jazz Band and master singers come and visit us and perform for a number of classes in the gym a few days ago. And that was really nice. That was really our first experience getting back to having guests in and performing in the building. And in addition to just being incredibly talented, both the teachers that came with them and the students. That was a really nice opportunity to start to bring our community back together. And we are looking forward to making a trek with our 5th and 6th grade students to see the dress rehearsal of the musical here at MVU. So it's really nice to be bringing some of those things back to the work that we're doing. We are in full swing with thinking about staffing for next year. Right now, we have filled our 2 librarian positions that we had open with a couple of candidates that we feel really good about. And so we're really supportive of the board in allowing us to kind of reconfigure those positions a little bit and have a librarian in each building. So we're very excited about the candidates that we were able to move forward in the process. We're also very excited to have filled our physical education teaching position for next year. So we're off to a good start with our hiring. We have a number of our teachers, 3 teachers, that we are moving into intervention positions to fill some retirements. And that has left us with some classroom vacancies in addition to 1 classroom vacancy based on a retirement. So we're working on next week on Monday, interviewing a number of classroom teacher candidates. We're excited about the folks that we're going to be meeting then. And we're also going to be working on some special education positions to be hired pretty soon. So that is a very large part of the work that Justina and I will be working on, have been working on, and will be working on in the next few weeks. I just want to thank quickly our buildings and grounds and custodial crew. They're always working hard, but the amount of things that they get done during the vacations is always a little bit amazing to me. So we did some renovations to our student behavior space in the central building that has really improved the confidentiality and the privacy that we're able to offer students who are processing behavior. And that was quite an undertaking, and those folks really dove right into that. So that was much appreciated. We fixed a couple of drainage issues in the kitchen and in the bathroom in Babcock. And so we're glad to have those facilities working well. And we also did kind of a refresh of our conference room and made that a more usable space in the central building. So these things on top of all of the other things that our custodial maintenance people do during break were big projects, and we really appreciated that. The last thing that I wanted to highlight, and I did talk about it a little bit in my report, is our pilot project with FEV tutoring. This is an online minute tutoring sessions in either reading or math each week. FEV tutoring has demonstrated to us some really impressive results. After 15 sessions, their students make an average of 1 year's growth academically in the targeted subject area. So we're really excited to have this pilot going on for now in the next 15 weeks and be able to see how that helps our students. That's all in addition to any services that our students would be receiving in school. So it doesn't take the place of classroom instruction. It doesn't take the place of intervention. It's a new supplemental service. And thanks to Jen Mitchell, for our technology person, for helping to facilitate the technology associated with that. We're really excited to see the supports that our students are given. This is a program that taps into the STAR 360 reading and math assessment data that our students use at school. And then when our students meet with their tutors, the lessons they receive are targeted specifically to the needs that we've identified for them. So it's really individualized and differentiated. And we've had a good experience in the first week or so of that tutoring piece. They also offer kind of an on-demand homework support for students. One of our 10 families asked about that specifically, and so we kind of trialed that spontaneous signing on to the system, seeing who you get for a tutor. I sat with a student the other day and kind of pretended to be the parent at home, and just to see how that would go. And that student asked for some help with what would have been a homework assignment, and it was really, really successful. The students at the end of those sessions all have the opportunity to rate their tutor and give feedback. And that's something to students that's really exciting, that their thoughts and opinions about how things have gone are taken into consideration. And this team of 10 students that we put together for the trial, I met with initially and really kind of talked to them about, in addition to this supporting them academically, they're kind of my team to help decide if this is something we want to use working forward. So our students always appreciate being in those leadership opportunities. The last thing I wanted to mention when it comes to student leadership is we are continuing to have students on the vast majority of our hiring committees. We have 2 students that will sit on our classroom teacher hiring day next week. We had students sit in on our PE process, and that was a really nice opportunity for our students to have some leadership and also begin to realize what it's like to be on the other end of the table when you're applying for a job. And I think these are all 6th graders that we involve in that process, and they have proven themselves very capable and mature, and short of reassuring a mom who called me and said my son came home and said I needed to go buy him a suit because he was interviewing teacher candidates, and assuring her that that was not one of our requirements. They are really enjoying that process. So those are my highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about my report.
Any questions for Chris? I want to thank you publicly for including the board in Wednesday Weekly. I've been on board here going into my 18th year, and it's the first time I think I've done a Wednesday Weekly, other than my wife brought it home from school, but I think it's good. And I've got to see Mr. Highgate, principal, because I know she sent something out too. See where we go.
Yeah, we do too, so we can send that to you too, Dawn.
Well, that would be nice. I mean, maybe the board member, other board members don't care, but let me tell you why I care. There's a good example. One of the people who was highlighted was a young man, his technology man. When our first daughter was born and Susan went to prenatal classes, his mother went. His dad became my best friend. For years, we did a lot of things together. Not so much in the last couple years. His dad died in November. And because of COVID, I was going to do the service on him. So to see that Craig was there. So Mrs. Collins and I went and visited the other day. It was really quite enjoyable. But I like reading about some of the other Kirsten Belgos. I mean, one of the top teachers pulled off a big thing. Kirsten Burroughs and her students were the only students, and I don't know, maybe this happens as well, but were ever allowed to have the Senate chamber to take and conduct a bill, just like they were elected officials. They sat in the seats, and the head of the Senate offered them the opportunity to do that. And so that's quite an experience for those kids. Justina, any comment?
No.
Is what he told us the truth?
Every third line.
It needs to be watched, right? All right, Joyce, go ahead, Justina, something you want to say? I know for years you really pushed.
Would you like me to step out?
I know for about 3 years, seems like we had you on overtime for the playground. So you must have some big project going in addition to your daily routine.
Well, we have another playground going, and we were updating the preschool, the pre-KK playground. We got that going last year, and it's been a year of kind of back order and on hold. But now all the parts are in, and I think Jason's just working to get that scheduled. So we did have another one. We just didn't have to fundraise for it because it's a much smaller scale.
You just come to meetings, it's like, so she works full time in it, and then she does a playground.
That was a full time. That was a lot. Debbie Winters, she was a rock star. There was a lot of help there.
Justina's big project in all seriousness, really, and I would like to say publicly, has really been so supportive this year and really helping me get acclimated and make the transition from a much smaller school to a much larger school. And having someone with that institutional history and understanding has been really supported. So we joke a little bit that Justina's goal is to give me whatever I need this year, but she really does, and I appreciate it.
Good. All right, Joyce, over to you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna stand up because it's the old teacher in me. I hate not being able to see all the faces. So I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna say ditto to the last thing that Chris said about the, not about Justine, even though I love Justine, about the last part of his report about the FEV tutoring, because Highgate and Franklin are both also participating in that. So we're excited about that, waiting to kind of see how it works out. I'm just gonna start with a couple of the school happenings right before vacation. As the other schools, we had James Bruchak come to Franklin, and he did do a whole school assembly for us before vacation. And it was just really nice because a lot of our kids had read Raccoon's Last Race. And so to have the author do that story was just really exciting for the kids. And but I have to say, when I was reading some of the thank you notes, they loved the scary story, which was the stone giant when he told that. They also loved all the talk about animal tracking, and they had a nice opportunity to ask some questions, and the whole thing was just a big hit. So we appreciated Jeff Benet organizing that and having James Bruchak. So the other thing, right before vacation, we had Spirit Week, and that's always a great week with all the theme days, and we had super participation by every class. The first grade ended up winning. We do the highest percentage participation, and the first grade ended up winning, but it was really close. Over vacation, as Chris said, lots of projects get done, and at our school, we had the flooring at office bathroom and the lobby bathrooms replaced. Want to thank Laura for all of her support around all those projects. But we had the flooring done. Also, we had some new desks for 6th grade. So we just had the plastic tables because we had plastic tables from COVID. With the number of students that we had, we were able to get desks for in there. The new stove was installed in the kitchen. Also in the kitchen, Stephen did an amazing job on the butcher block counter that's in the kitchen, refinishing that. It was just beautiful. I don't think Jen and Carolyn want to use it because it just looks so nice. Trying to think, and there was just, and the library shelves were all redone. So those are really very sturdy now. Nancy was getting a little nervous about a lot of those shelves. After vacation, we continued our collaboration with ECHO around STEM learning. Elizabeth Knuckles came to school to do engineering tasks, both in kindergarten and in 1st grade. 1st grade, they did one where they had to design and create and test a device that would help a butterfly migrate to Mexico. So that was a pretty cool task. The kids had a great time with that, learned a lot. Kindergarten, it was a Lego racer challenge, and they had to try to design the fastest Lego car. So there was all kind of variables with that. You know, should you put more wheels? Should you have it heavier, narrower? You know, what would be the best thing for that? And it was a 30-foot track. And those of you who know me and know how I like to drive, I really enjoyed this too. I wanted to get the fastest racer. But and one of the kindergartners said, it was the best day ever. And that's all school. What else? We continued our work with the math consultant, Christian Quartermatch. He was with us March 14th and spent time with the teachers that day, really kind of reviewing all the different math fluency activities and really discussing strategies around what more we can do to really help kids progressing with their math fluency. What else? Mud season started with the Crossroads program, the after-school program. And Nancy and I are doing the chess club later this year because we want to be able to mix the cohorts because we have experienced chess players be teachers for the younger kids. And so we usually do it in January. We waited till March, which was perfect because now we could have it without masks and the cohorts mixed. And we have over 30 kids in the chess club. And it's just been just a joy. I was a little worried, 30-something kids in chess club at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, but it's really been a lot of fun. And we're just so excited to have all of them. And parent conferences went super last week. As of this Friday, we will have every family of every child will have had a conference. We had a few that had to be rescheduled for this week, just due to vacations and illness and work. But by Friday, we will have every parent will have been in for a conference. So we really appreciate parents doing that and coming in and hearing about their progress of their child and how we can all work together to have even more progress this next 2.5 months. And I think I have a few more coming events. Transition activities with MVU. Grade 6 to grade 7, we'll be meeting with representatives from the 7th grade teams in April. The next day, we'll go to the dress rehearsal. And as Chris said, having the MVU music department visit was great. Not only for just when you get to see those kids and how grown up they are, some of them, I was like, I can hardly recognize them, but they're just so talented. And also I think it's a wonderful way for them to really promote their program. So it's been really hard during COVID for the master singers and for the band. And so I think it was super for that and really encouraging the elementary kids to continue to stay with their music. So, and we have a big penny war coming up, so, and that will help the boot show. Oh, and speaking of, with the chess program, if any of you are chess players, we are always looking for somebody. I know 3 to 4 is not a great time for some people, but anybody to come and give some of our kids that are, you know, much more gifted than Nancy and I are at chess, to give them a good game. So I don't know if Avery's around at all that time of day, or if Ben comes home.
So I have a chess story from one of your former students. My Josie, who was a sophomore, a couple months ago, had a bunch of classmates over. One of them was Franklin. My girls won't play chess with me. I show no quarter. So,
Well, no, you can never do that.
so there was a Franklin, former Franklin student says, I know how to play chess. We did it in school. And so we spent the night, they were all in the basement, and he and I played 2 or 3 games.
Okay.
And he almost beat me.
Oh, good.
I can beat a 10th grader, 9th grader. Well, I love chess, and I think it's a great game.
Well,
It's a great game.
well, truly, Toby, like, we would love to have, because
Yeah.
Nancy and I just didn't
I'm
want place
tempted.
to
I
play.
can't find people that no one wants to play.
Well, we would love it to have somebody else come.
I bribe my daughters. I'll give you $10 if you beat me. $10.
Thank you, Joyce.
You know, a lot of takers if you came over to school and said that. Thank you,
Mr.
John.
Hartman, I know you're not on the agenda, but are any words of wisdom or anything you want to share with us? No. At least you have the opportunity if you would like to do so. Thank you. Some questions somewhere, Peter?
I was just, we haven't, I don't think we've talked to the principals at the elementary school since the mask mandate was removed. And Mr. Hartman told us last week, or last meeting, that the things went pretty smoothly and the flow was good. I'm assuming it was the same, seeing nobody mentioned it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so funny because it already seemed like I thought of it tonight when I was thinking about this meeting tonight, about mentioning it. And it's just like, it already seems like it was so long ago. Like it just happened really not that long ago, but everybody just got right back to it. And not that everybody wasn't excited about it, they were. And kids saying, that's what you look like.
Is that what they said to me?
Not to me, Donna. You said you were losing play.
You said it, I'm the chair.
I get a lot of that in the backpack
kids'
building.
teachers said.
You got a lot of what?
I get a lot of that in the backpack building because they're K first and second, so they've never really been in school without a mask. So a lot of them had never seen me, particularly without a mask. Not so much in the central building, but with the little kids.
This is what a second grader said to his
It was cute.
teacher.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what.
Thank you very much for asking that.
I think one of the things that has been really impressive to me about when we looked at the masks was that it really was presented as an option. So now it really is, you make the choice that feels good to you. And one of the things in the back of my mind when we did that was just wondering if those students or adults that continued to choose to wear their mask would kind of become the outliers, and if that would be problematic with our students at all. And it's really been impressive that everyone's individual decision has been respected as students, and we haven't had to have any of those conversations. So,
Other questions for the administrators before we move on? Number 7A we have done. Mr. Martin is at the table and we'll be taking his oath. We are now on 7B. And Justina and Chris Dodge, would you each move down 1 seat that way? Franklin people don't bite, sometimes they do. Ms. Martin, would you come up and sit where Chris Dodge is, please? I think we're going to need an executive session at some point.
Yes. I wanted to share publicly for the camera what our process has been and then make my recommendation. And then I would expect we would need a finding to go into executive session later to discuss.
And why I would like Chris, here now, after you do your thing, I would like to have her share with the board a little bit about a background that she shared when she interviewed. I won't give her a half hour, but maybe 5 minutes. I think it's important that the whole board get a chance to hear what Devin and I heard.
So we held a lengthy search for an MVU co-principal as Mr. Hartman is retiring at the end of the school year. And Bonnie led that search. We had a thought exchange that went out to the community and to teachers looking for what characteristics are important in leadership. We put together, I think we had 17 candidates, which we screened and looked at those that were the most qualified to bring to a committee. Our committee had parents, students, Jeff Benet from Indian Education, had middle school teachers, had MVU administration. I was on the committee, Bonnie was on the committee. Am I missing a stakeholder? 2 board members.
2 board members.
And a paraeducator that works in the middle and high
Jeff
school.
Benet, representative at the elementary community.
Absolutely, he was an important member of the committee. And looked at the input from the community that helped shape questions. We interviewed 3 candidates and Christy Martin was the recommended candidate unanimously out of that committee. And then we held a site visit as well, and members of the committee, including Devin Batchelder from the board, attended and met with folks at Sheldon Elementary to ask questions about Christy as a leader. And through that process, there really was a very clear and unanimous decision that brings me to recommend Christy Martin as the next co-principal here at MVU. And we're very excited about that. This is Christy's return to MVU. And she's a leader that we have a great deal of respect and regard for.
Before we go to Christy, it is Christy, right?
Yes.
Okay. For the board, and Julie, slap me if I'm wrong, but I think in the discussion that we had in the whole hiring process, you may have known Dan Palmer expressed an interest in being assigned to what we call the senior high school, although that, what that's going to mean is still up for discussion with you and the team, and probably back to the board. But the grade levels, we talked about 7, 8, 9 with a 10, 12, or 7 and 8 with a 9, 12, that's what's happening in recent years. So anyway, that was part of the discussion. And the committee felt that Mr. Palmer's record here, I think, is outstanding. And if he desired to do 9, 12 or 10, 12, how it works out, that we should go that route. So he will be the principal of whatever the configuration is there. And the person who will have responsibility for middle school and possibly grade 9. And then there's some other, I think, divisions that Mr. Hartman and Mr. Palmer have kind of evolved since the first year that we came up with this bright idea. And that I'm sure the board will hear from too. So July 1, if all goes well tonight, we'll have 2 people on and they'll keep us up to date how the breakdown goes through the superintendent's office. So if you would be so kind as to give us a little bit of background about yourself. I'd like to see you start with when you came here as a student teacher. I thought that was quite interesting. But you start wherever you want to.
Thank you. I did my student teaching here at MVU, and I started in 1991. So 1991, I was a student teacher in the middle school language arts department, and Jay Hartman actually had a student teacher at the same time in the middle school social studies department. So we shared a desk, she and I. I don't know where she is now. Have you kept in touch with her? Yeah, I can't even remember her name. That seems like a long time ago. And I finished my student teaching experience. I looked around for a job. There weren't very many. I continued to work at Hannaford, which, I was lucky enough that, they needed lots of people. So I worked lots of hours there. And Joyce Stone, who was the department leader, in the language arts department called me a couple days before school started. I was on my way out to the Champlain Valley Fair, and she said, I need a 9th grade teacher, but it's just one class. I was like, what? What? That's really part-time. She goes, yeah, you're gonna do a homeroom and one class, and you're gonna team teach it with a member of the special ed department. We're trying something new. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll do it. So I came in and I did homeroom, taught one class, did my prep, and then headed to Hannaford and worked 3 to 11 because I needed to pay some bills.
Sounds like a principal's job.
Yeah, yeah, it's about the same hours, right? And that year that I was here, Pat Hudson, who was a longtime member of the English department, was retiring, and so I was able to get that position. And then I was here until, in a lot of different ways, until 7 years ago, when I was hired as a principal at Sheldon Elementary School. And so when this came up, I sent my application. Let's explore that and see what that looks like. I have loved being in an elementary school, and I love that I will work in pre-K to 12. I think that that's a gift, and I am not really all that interested in college, so that pre-K to 12 works well for me, and I'm excited to be able to come back.
Questions for Christy? Anyone have a question? I spoke to a superintendent and said that I thought we'd have a finding to go to executive session so we could determine the proposed salary and anything else that Julie wants to share with us. All right, if there are no other questions, I thank you. And if you want to sit at the table, you're welcome to do it.
Don, can I just, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Can I just say welcome back to her? It's really nice to have her back at MVU, especially since Sheldon left us.
I know. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, I was gonna say not by choice, yeah.
Okay, I guess moving on to Lauren. Oh, Peter? All right, thanks for helping me out. I don't have to go ahead, Peter.
Don, I'm just wondering, because it says principal hire and action, what you're talking about for going into executive session, we can't hire somebody in executive session anyways.
No, we have to act when we come out.
But I'm just asking if we want to do this part first, and then in executive session, we can decide.
Either way, that's up to the board. If we want to hire her, and then determine what the salary and benefits are. And I think the benefits are pretty clear, I would imagine. It's gone through those sorts of standards. So, it's up to you as board members. If you want to take and have a vote to hire now, that's fine. Or if you want to wait till we have our executive session discussion.
Just before, if we do vote, just before, I just want to make clear that the committee, Julie, that's who you're
Yes.
recommending. You're saying that Christy is what you guys went through, and that's who you are recommending.
We are very clearly recommending Christy to the board for hire.
I will, I'll make that motion then.
All right, motion by Peter to offer the position to Christy Martin. And Terry seconded it. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of offering the position to Christy Martin for a co-principal MVU effective July 1, 2022, say aye or raise your hand. When I see we have everybody's voted, I haven't been asking for no votes, all right? Anyone opposed?
Steve is off camera.
Steve is off, so now we're down to 6-0.
Make that 6-0.
Any no votes or any abstentions? Okay. All right, we'll have to work out the details. Let's see. All right, I guess, Laura, that brings up C, FY23 budget discussion and possible adoption.
Revote, yes. So I guess I'll start by saying that, and Julie, I've spent a lot of time in Julie's office today. Since the budget defeat. It's proven to be challenging to find areas to make reductions because as you recall, primarily it was salary and benefit increases, and those salaries and benefits were in direct correlation with the board goal of hiring and retaining high quality teachers. So we had to be a little creative. So there is a new version of the budget it's a marked revote at the top. It's in the drive. I'm not sure if you want me to share.
I'd like to have you share it, because I didn't get the shared drive by the time I got home. I was wanted to grab something to eat.
Why don't you share that? I will say, one of the additional challenges is many of you who are experienced with the way school budgets and the way they're supposed to go, is the agency of ed is supposed to finalize equalized pupils and other information that school districts need to put together a budget to the voters. And after our votes, our budget was adopted and warned and printed and ballots were made, then they gave us a new equalized pupil number, which was a reduction. So not only did we, in our research to bring you new proposals, have to look at a decrease in that 9.21 spending per equalized pupil increase. It was actually a higher number than that based on, we had to be transparent and give you the actual new number. Because all the data you'll see from now on in years to come, comparing one year to another, will have that new number. So we had to look even more closely at shifting revenue, whether this position that we expect to get grant funding should be in the budget or removed from the budget. If you do that, you're removing the revenue as well. So, we have to be very careful at looking at how we were funding things so we could reduce that spending per equalized pupil. Because what I heard from you last time is that you are not interested in reducing the budget substantially. You have very few things that were true adds in this budget, and except for the fact that we were including some additional positions, additional nursing, additional tutoring, et cetera, in the budget that was being offset by revenue from ESSER. And that we have increases in our salaries for teachers and in our wages for support staff. So I guess that's setting the context.
Robert, I'm not sure when I zoom in why it won't
get bigger.
Well, it is getting bigger.
Click on the side that we want to start. Click on the left first.
It slides back. It keeps reverting back.
So what impact did the change of the legislature, what kind of impact did that have on?
So the equalized people went down an additional almost 3 equalized pupils. And that is now a frozen number. Is it
So our equalized pupils went up.
Just
Went down
200,
again.
okay.
Even though our enrollment's going up, I think one of the things that's important to share with the community is that spending per equalized pupil number is quite volatile, particularly in COVID. They spent last year, if you remember, they froze our average daily membership so that there wouldn't be a dramatic increase and decrease with the number of students who didn't come to school for preschool or kindergarten or chose to home study, et cetera. So this year they didn't have that aspect. There was still an impact from that, although our enrollment has been increasing. Our students who were out at home study, about half of them have returned that were out just temporarily as opposed to those who have committed to home study long term. So that number we expected to go down, but it's not a trend. Our enrollment continues to increase. Our enrollment numbers this year are an increase over last year by, I think, 20-something people. So we expect that rolling average, which then again, of course, as you know, is weighted, it's not pupil per pupil. We expect that to increase in future years. But this percentage is just a look back at 1 year. What did we spend per pupil last year? Well, last year we actually went down. So this year it goes up because those numbers change from year to year. And that's I think one of the toughest part of that line in our ballots that's required.
Questions from the board?
Do you want me to explain? Or do you want me to go through the budget changes?
I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Kind of set it in context.
Any further questions on this whole equalized pupil, because by that number going down, then our percentage goes up, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's to make sure everybody understood. Okay, now go ahead.
Okay. Now it's not doing anything, Robert. There we go. So again, there were just a few changes that we tried to go literally line by line and just find anywhere that we could make minimal reductions based on actuals. So we did find some lines under, you'll see everything in red. So dues and fees under instructional, we were able to reduce that from the last number. There's a variance column on the right. It's just can't show everything on this screen, but if you look in the drive, you will notice the variance column. Going down, looking under central office, under negotiations, we had a $25,000 legal fee line. That's just in case we need legal counsel. We just negotiated professional contracts. And so we probably won't need that again anytime soon. We do have support staff coming up, but we've been handling most of those. Sorry for this, you guys. It's scrolling on its own.
So it was 25,000, did you cut it? So we still have some legal.
I just kept 2,500 though. We actually had 2 professional service lines, so together it's 5,000, but we just haven't been using that. It was more of a precautionary or.
Hopefully we won't need much.
Other than, that's the line right here. You'll see legal potential. Legal services that I was speaking about. But other than that, really very few lines. I think it was about 50,000 that we were able to find in just small dues and fees, a couple of professional services, a slight reduction in a supply line that we found under central office, special ed, where we're saving money on copier paper. So we were really, really searching and kind of scraping our pennies together to say. But what we came up with was mostly on the revenue side. And so I think this is easier to see also. So if you have any questions about that, by the way, though, it is in the shared drive and all the changes are marked in red and there is a variance column. So please let me know. So
do you want to take questions on the expense side before you go to revenues? You want to do it all?
Any way you'd like.
Anybody have any questions as far as what Laura said to this point regarding the budget?
Laura, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's always been a pet peeve of mine about the equipment. I see that the equipment leases there's a change there. And I know that you negotiate, I know that. And so is it something new in this budget that we're gonna be increased on that?
The equipment leases are just what is already been leased. Actually, I'm going to get to a revenue offset of that right now, but we did leave those expenses in there fully. Some increase based on interest rates, or we had a new copier contract that you had approved previously. But other than that, I haven't changed anything since the previous draft.
Okay, I know you stay on that, but yeah. I just there's a big number, so. I was just curious
copier
about
lease
that.
is a big, that's a big one.
Every copier in every school.
And all the maintenance and toner and Robert and I meet with that SPC, who is our third party administrator on those copier contracts more than we'd like to. Thank you for bringing that up though.
No, but I just thought it is a big number and it always sticks out.
Other questions?
Thank you. I have a question, and that is, because it's hard for me to see without getting my face right up into the screen. And so I was looking in my drive. You said it's in our drive, Laura?
Yes.
It is, okay. I just have to find it. Okay,
Fiscal year 20, it's a different one. There's a lot of them in there. Let's see. Fiscal year
Okay.
2020, budget revote.
okay, thank you. I figured it out, thanks.
Sure. So to have a revote on the budget, it has to be a different number and revised. So
Yes, it does. The budget amount has to be different. There are two other numbers in the article when you vote. If you remember, like you have the budget amount, it says X amount of dollars, 41 million.
For 500 students.
And yes, those by statute don't have to change, but of course they by default would. But the statute says that the budget number has to be different than what was proposed last time. It could go up or it could go down.
So it doesn't have to go down, it could go up.
By statute, it could do that, yeah.
I'm just asking because what if it wasn't the number for the reason that it got voted down? And it was due to another reason, whether it's another right or complaint or issue or lack of communication or something. So I'm just putting that out there as just a question. Or, because I mean, I can't see how it went down or went up by 25% as really being the reason. Just a question.
We've thought a lot about that also. What are the factors? So there are a lot of things that impact the budget beyond the expenses, which tends to be what we focus a lot on. But I did want to take a minute just to explain to this board some things that have come to fruition or that have been realized since we proposed the last budget vote, because as we think about potentially reducing a budget for a revote, actually mostly what I've learned since then has gone in the opposite direction. I think that's important to share. So we have settled a professional union agreement that was at 6% new money with long-term disability and life insurance. Those are new costs for that agreement. I only budgeted 5% in the previous draft because we were yet to have settled. So I thought that was a good number to use. So that's about 164,000 plus the long-term disability of 51,000 and life insurance at a little over 28. We just have recently launched a new transportation RFP. I'm sure you guys have been to the gas station recently and had to fill up your vehicle, and I'm sure it cost you more than you wanted it to. So unfortunately, that will probably have a negative impact on our transportation contract moving forward. We budgeted a conservative increase like we typically do, but I'm unfortunately thinking that may be more. So I put a conservative number here. Special ed revenue. I always hate to throw people at the Agency of Education under the bus. They are working extremely hard. They are understaffed and underpaid, but they did make an error with our special ed revenue moving to the census block grant. They neglected, when they were doing the calculations, there was lots of communication. And then after we were told that our number was firm as to what we could expect as that block grant amount, rather than the the reimbursement amount that we typically get. They neglected to remove Sheldon from our calculation, and I don't have any way of knowing that. I just get a number. So that was another 322,000. So overall, us shifting, we thought it was going to be a minimal decrease. That changing in funding source of about 300,000 is actually going to be about 640. So that's another $322,000 worth of lost revenue that I'm concerned about. And then we have the capital project that you approved at the last meeting. And that's not a problem. It's $240,000 though, that was money that because of ESSER funding, I thought I could offset other costs to free up that money. So overall, we're looking at about almost $821,000 worth of things that are headed in the opposite direction of where I'd like them to be going at this point in time. And then I just think it's important to mention that we are yet to receive our 21 audit. We are working every day. We've been working for months consistently since we did a pre-audit months ago with the auditor, reminding them, following up with them, resending information, uploading information, but we are yet to have a firm fund balance. I did verify that we are on track with what we think that fund balance to be as of today. But that's unaudited, and that always makes me a little unsettled, just that, that's why we have auditing firms when you run a $43 million company, is because they can find things. So I just think that's important to share, to put some of this conversation in context, because in my world, 820,000 is still a lot of money.
And just so people understand that we, in such a large budget, we are very tight with everything. We know that there will be positions that don't get filled and, things that end up costing more in some areas, less in others. Those shifts are happening in real time, all the time, with leaders in the business office. And yet, as we are, we felt very comfortable with the carryover that we have projected and the revenue coming into the district with federal grants that offsets and supplants some of our local costs, that frees up money such as this. But we wanted to make sure you understood that it was a negative pressure on the budget. So we're coming to you with some recommendations of a smaller, slightly smaller overall budget number, but are not recommending that we go too deep for some of these reasons.
So first, I've outlined a couple of options here, and these are only proposals. This is just through, being creative and looking at the revenue and expenses. We did have additional retirements that we actually received letters of retirement on, and we worked with Bonnie on those. So we had only accounted for in the first version the ones that we had actually had confirmed retirements. There was quite a bit of savings there. I'd say about 70,000 in overall savings. As Julie said, the equalized pupil number is now frozen. That was down another 2.59 equalized pupils. That has a negative impact on your spending per equalized pupil and your tax rate. Those few lines that we reduced, about 50-something thousand, that we reduced slightly. We moved a SWAT teacher to an ESSER funding, meaning that the expense is still on the expense side, but we offset that with ESSER revenue on the revenue side, and I'll go to the tax rate page in a moment. We had the reduction of a Highgate teaching position. That was a newer position last year.
It was an added position that we used grant funding for. So it's a grant funded position that we're removing, but it is a removal on the expense side. Yeshua and I spent a long time looking at student numbers, and we feel good about, almost everybody's moving, but we feel good about the class sizes there. So we were able to reduce that one.
Unfortunately, that had a corresponding reduction of ESSER revenue on the revenue side, but it did help with the expenditure budget.
Correct.
I've updated the fund balance. Our fund balance from last year actually increased, and that was due to a prior year special ed reconciliation. We used to have a much better gauge on how that happened and when, but again, the AOE likes to keep us on our toes. So we're just realizing that now that it was in our favor. So that was good. I've increased ESSER revenue to cover 50% of all tech device leases. And that was something that Steve had just brought up, and tutoring expenses. And so since the pandemic, we have made a choice to fund their very clear ESSER eligible expenses. And so we've made a conscious choice that all tutoring and all tech devices have been run through ESSER 1, 2, and then it will be ARP ESSER. And then that frees up money on the budget side for other purposes. And so it just makes it easier to manage, and it's clean and it's eligible. So we've made that choice. So in your first draft, that was some of the money that I was going to utilize for like that capital project to subsidize the roof project. I've now included 50% of that on the revenue side to help get that tax rate down. So I'll have to be more creative in how we address that. I've increased the special ed extraordinary revenue on the revenue side by 25,000. And I've also made the adjustment. I think it's appropriate to make that adjustment to the special ed census grant, that $322,000 reduction that we were told about by the AOE. I've now made that reduction. With those changes, and I can show you the tax rate page in a moment, it would bring the budget down to almost $220,000. That's the expense budget. So we'd be at $40,830,979. That would make your spending for equalized pupil $16,449. That's a reduction from the first proposal of $223. It would bring our spending per equalized pupil increase to 7.75. That would be down from 9.21. So that's a reduction of 1.46. The second proposal that I had here, if you're looking to get closer to the 7%, as I think was maybe suggested, would be to make a further reduction of 2 positions. And I'll let Julie speak about what we were thinking there.
So should you want to get closer to a 7, it would be 7.38 increase in spending per equalized pupil. We feel we have a couple of vacant positions. We would always try and do things through attrition. And so just so the community understands, any time that we have teachers leaving, we examine class sizes, we examine how things are done. Can we reconfigure? Is this the most efficient and effective model to replace teachers? And we don't move forward until we've done that and said, yes, that the position needs to be filled. We have had, however, a couple of positions that we have continued to budget for, and this board has supported us budgeting. One of them is one of the ag program positions that we've been unable to fill for maybe 3 years. And we have a special ed position that we have not been able to fill for more than 2 years. We have a lot of attrition this year in special education, so it really doesn't matter in which building that position is cut. It hasn't been filled in years. But we feel that we are operating and can operate with a further reduction in those 2 positions. It wouldn't be our first recommendation. We hope to fill all those positions. We think it's good for programming and for students, but we are here in this situation. And so we certainly don't want to cut people who plan on returning or have class sizes that are too large or not have particular offerings that we typically do have.
So Julie, one of the things I asked last time, and maybe you've covered it, but what did we add this year for positions? What we added, if we got school by school, did we add anything in this budget in Franklin? I know last year we added quite a bit. For the school year we're in right now, we added positions in Franklin.
We added portions.
Portions. I think it came to one that was.
They were all offset with ESSER revenue.
Right, and so the same with anything that we did add this year, we added a 0.2 of a librarian so that as a good time, because it's difficult to find a part-time person, and that's being offset with revenue.
So that's in Franklin?
So that's in IB. Yeah.
So Franklin didn't add anything? Know what I'm hearing, or?
This year, nothing that isn't a temporary.
I'm talking about positions.
No.
So I know we've added music time, and we've added.
That was all last year.
Last year,
Yep.
psychologists, but we're going forward.
And at this point, that's all offset with revenue.
And so Highgate cut a teacher? Did they reduce a teacher already?
We added a teacher last year,
Yeah.
and we don't need it this year for the following year.
And Swanton?
I think that's having increase of our position, though, 0.2 of our position.
In Highgate?
Yes, in Swanton, they did not add anything, but they do need an additional classroom teacher. So they're trading one of the interventionist positions for, we have that class of 96 kids. I don't know what to do with them, 96 of them. They keep on keeping on.
And the people who were in the library, they really weren't paid paraeducator.
No, they were, that is pretty much a wash.
Yeah. Okay. So
We
MVU?
have additional nursing support in elementary right now, but that's completely offset and related to the pandemic, offset with ESSER revenue.
Right.
But it's increasing from this year to next year.
No,
In the expense, it is. On the expense side, it is. But there's offsetting revenue on the revenue side. And the intention is to work within the constraints,
But
not
then
make
offsetting revenue
additions.
will go away someday.
right, and then we will either eliminate those positions or find other efficiencies or positions we need less in order to cover them. We administrators have to have that conversation. Do we need 2 nurses? Or
I'm
if we
asking
do,
these,
right,
I'm asking these questions because this next budget vote is really key,
it is.
really key. Usually you don't get more than 2/3 to 3/4 of the number of voters in a revote that you get on town meeting day. When a budget gets voted down, if the people who voted down had a good reason, which everybody I think probably did, you probably will see, I worked the polls for many years, the people will come back out. And so in order to get the people who support the school out, it's a challenge. And I won't talk to school districts in northern Vermont, but once you're on that downhill slope, it goes down a second time. It is tough.
Much harder. Still decline.
So whatever we go out there with, and I think, I honestly think, even though I wasn't directly involved, I think through your office, you people, and Devlin and Terry, the people who worked on it did a good job. But the bottom line is the budget went down. And if it goes down again, then it won't be a pleasant conversation because we'll have to cut things that we really, I think Mr. Hartman probably doesn't want to comment, but I think he's seen those days when that snowball rolls downhill. It doesn't stop. So whatever we come up with, we certainly are going to have a Herculean effort to convince people that that's what we need. Or
Terry's hand is up.
What's that?
Terry's hand is up.
Okay, I can't see it.
You can't see because we're sharing.
All right,
Robert's been.
all right, thank you, Robert. I need you. It takes me a while to get in the 21st century and try to watch everybody.
Public on the other hand.
If they aren't here, say I don't. Yes, Terry, come with us. Come speak.
Thank you, Don. You've got enough going on without having to look at little squares. But I just wanted to say a couple of things. I understand about the budget being one of the most important things we do as a school board. And I understand that it might have been a shock when people saw what the increase was. However, the increase was a shock because last year went down. And so it's really not comparing apples to apples. The other thing that we have this, I don't know how much they aired, but I would imagine it's a lot of money to have Sheldon included in what we thought began with, and then have that taken out for special ed funding. So, and then the price of gas and transportation. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's gone up since we had that vote. Now, the flip side of that is it's also gone up for people, the price of gas and all that for them too. So we really try and weigh, but I do want to say when we came up with that first budget, it really was a legitimate budget in terms of we have a greater need right now. So I think some people thought that they didn't want to support it because what will we do when the ESSER funds aren't here? That we've already created this big thing. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of that stuff is because we have so much need right now because of COVID, which is why we have the ESSER funds. So it's not like we're going to go up another 9% next year or any of that kind of stuff. So I think that's really important for us to keep in mind. And I don't know how we get that out to people. The other thing is we know that we have had some of the poorest test scores in Vermont. And when we look back and do the research, we know that part of that is attrition is because of, we have such big turnover. And so we had to raise our price because anyone can go 10 miles down the road and make $10,000 more as teachers. So of course we had a hard time keeping teachers. So I guess I wish we could explain it to people because I think if they really knew, they wouldn't be as opposed to this increase. The other thing though is I think you guys were ingenious to come up with the cuts that you did come up, but then I don't quite understand how just doing without an ag position and without another position could get us down to 7-point-something%. And I'm curious because it sounds like, oh, no brainer. That sounds great. We haven't had those. If I were listening to this and didn't know everything, I'd think, well, why don't we do that? But what are the negatives? Because there's a lot of people that depend on that tech center. I mean, there's a lot of kids that's the reason for going to school. We heard a board member in an exit interview tell us that one of his kids just never really, loved the tech center. So that's all I'm saying. What are the downsides of cutting that harshly? Thank you for letting me ask.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I think, Terry, that's where it was so difficult. And that's why I tried as hard as I could to work on the revenue side and how could we taking into account grant funding and ESSER funding and still trying to be transparent and accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, which I think is extremely important even during this time, and avoid that fiscal cliff in 2 years that we all are afraid of. That is why we targeted the revenue side, and I can walk through the revenues to show you why, with just a $200,000 decrease to the budget, and then the increase to revenues and moving some of those revenues around and trying to work on those as best that I could, how we then ended up at that decrease of, almost 2% spending.
Well, that's impressive. You don't have to do it tonight. I know that you are very fiscally conservative, that we've always been that way. So I totally trust what you've done. So thank you.
So board, you've heard Julie's, I won't say it's a recommendation, it's an option on 2 positions. We can leave the 2 there, we can cut 1 and keep 1 there, or we can cut them both. But I really think we need to give the staff direction. The clock is ticking. What's that?
Jen DeSorge, Jen
Oh, yeah,
Chevalier.
yeah. Okay, go ahead, Jen.
Hi, Don. I feel a couple of things. I really don't want to see that ag position, excuse me, or it's a special ed position, correct, Julie?
Yeah.
I firmly feel that we should not cut those. I think it's really essential to the students that we keep that in place and try very hard to get those positions filled, especially the ag one. I'm personally a huge supporter of that. And I also agree with Terry that we need to try to get it out to people, maybe something a little simpler and easier for them to understand, but very descriptive of why the budget is the way it is. And I also think that it had to do a lot with people, not being informed. The more people I did talk to, they really weren't, like, oh, I missed voting, or, oh, it was when, and then another big thing, a lot of people still said after I talked to people from the last meeting that they just really assumed that they were going to get the ballots mailed to them. So I think for this next vote, I think we need to be really try to get it out there a lot, like advertise it as on an hourly thing. You know what I'm trying to say. And this is why I attended tonight, Terry, even though I'm really sick of this budget. I really, because everybody works. I just really wanted to make sure, to be here for this and kind of voice my opinion on it. And that, Laura, you guys did a really good job the first time around, and I'm sorry that you had to go through it a second time.
Thank you, Jen. Anything else?
Well, just that part. Oh, Toby has his hand.
Toby, go ahead.
So on a positive thing, I'd like to remind everybody, it was almost, 30 votes? 23, yeah. So I'm not too concerned. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but I also wanted to throw something out. Don alluded to it as far as turnout. I'm quite sure, I don't know if Julie's heard this yet, but I'm quite sure, and I don't really want to talk about it in a school setting, but I will, because I think there's another article Swanton's going to be voting on again.
They said.
Is it the same date?
Yeah, they're going to piggyback on us. If we had a revote, they were.
Yeah, so I suspect turnout could be large in our largest district, which is going to be interesting.
Right.
But that I think might either help or hurt the turnout. Well, I think it's going to help the turnout, whether it helps the budget or not. It's going to, I think turnout in Swanton's going to be pretty big on the 26th, right? Well, that day.
No.
What is the date? Sorry, what is the date?
I think it's the 26th. Yeah, 26th.
Swanton is thinking about bringing back the marijuana.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to bring us back. Any other comments we need to give some direction to the administration. And Peter?
Yeah, I'd like to just, Laura and Julie, know you put a lot of work into this, and I'm pleased with what you come up with. I think that you really worked hard to get us to this point. One question I have is looking at the reduction from the 9.21 to the 7.75 and 7.8 for the equalized per pupil increase. So is that based on the new number and not the old number?
This is based on the new, it would be
Yes.
based on the new number in each of those scenarios, yeah,
Okay,
depending on which scenario.
so that, to me, that makes this even better because that number would be lower, right? It would be if you use the old equalized pupil.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was missing where you were going with that, yes.
Okay, so, and listening to everybody's discussion about removing those two positions, I certainly support the ag section and everything. Quite frustrating that we can't fill those positions. I don't know how much longer we can keep those positions out there if we're not going to fill them. I certainly support the ag, but I can certainly support option 2 as well, to reduce. I mean, I think we're showing really good effort here. I think we're showing the voters that we're listening. We've made some hard decisions, and I think it needs to be pointed out if we go this route with number 2, that if this gets voted down, we're going to be in a really tough position. We're going to have to, I mean, it's going to be major. And, you know, like I said, I thought we had a good budget before, but it got voted down. So we can't go back without making a change in my feeling, because I've seen it before, like Don's talking about. If you try to bring back the same budget, you offend people because they think you're not listening to them, and they come back out to vote. I think this, like I said, I applaud you. I think this is a really good effort.
Thank you, Peter. Julie, I have a question because number one, I will not vote to eliminate the ag position because I've supported it forever. But I think on March 29th, there's a meeting at Highgate.
Yes.
A community meeting. And one of the things on there is career and technical education and agriculture. So for me to sit here tonight and vote to eliminate that position, going to a meeting in 10 days and say, oh yeah, by the way, we gotta do it. So I feel we should keep it in. So my question for you, Julie, is tell us a little more about the special ed position. So that if people do want to cut, I'm not saying we should, but because I'm not quite clear on it. Okay.
Well, we have a number of special educators, pre-K through 12th grade. We've had one position at MVU that has been vacant for, I think, 3 years. We've filled it. People move, you know, we've moved the position around, we've redesigned it, but we have not been able to fill all of our positions. We have at least 4 special ed positions that we will be hiring for next year. Plus we have one that is budgeted for, but we have not been able to fill. There's a shortage in teaching, and there's particularly a shortage in some areas. Special ed is one of them. Teachers of technical education and agriculture, business is another. Speech and language pathologists, all of those. So again, that position is one that we have been operating without. It would be our first recommendation, but it is something I spoke with the special ed director.
My question for the board is, the people who have been silent on cuts, I've heard both Peter and myself say we won't support cutting agriculture. So I would say probably agriculture is fairly safe unless somebody speaks up loudly and soon. So what about the special education position? Do we keep it in or we take it out?
Well, and I just want to be clear that we're not typically.
Two positions
Right,
are in
it's
this
two
proposal.
positions. What we think is going, unfortunately, what we think is going to happen in the environment that we're in, I don't know how many open positions we currently have, but it's a lot. There will be positions that we just simply cannot fill, which will create savings. Historically, over the last couple of years, these are two of the positions that we're using as examples, but I don't think in any conversation, we were saying that we wanted to informally cut those positions. If we could find an ag teacher and a special educator that was qualified, we would hire them in a heartbeat. That's not it's just, we know that there's going to be savings in some of these positions because there's no way we're gonna be able to fill them all. If that makes more sense, we were just using those as an example. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but that very much was our
If
conversation.
you don't budget for that, and the budget gets really tight.
Right.
we might
The
not.
tighter the budget
Yes,
gets, the
yes.
more.
Yeah.
So in a way, we may not be cutting them, but we may not be able to fill them either. If we don't have to.
Right.
Depending how things-
Yeah,
So-
I just didn't want to come across
So
that
I
way.
guess,
So am I hearing you maybe with a third option, just one position instead of two?
That's what I heard.
That's what I'm hearing, but I don't,
yeah, no, I think that is a third option. I think when
Okay.
we went through it, we're gonna cut one position and take our chances. I'm not saying we are. Is that what the board, I'm trying to read faces.
So, Laura, what would that new number be?
She would have to leave and come back with
Well,
that information.
Well, it'd take me just 2 seconds. I'd basically cut half of the 127,451. It wouldn't be the real amount of a position, but we don't even know who we're gonna be hiring, so the pennies don't matter.
Are we just cutting that number in half?
That's what I would have to do right now.
So it'd be less than 7.75, but it might be 7.5. We don't know. It's somewhere. I think get down to 7 was a really important step. All right. Yes, sir.
Just my opinion, because I do actually hear from financial members of Highgate. I think the budget, like the number, is but one factor of why more people want it down than not. And Terry had mentioned that the like curriculum and testing and how like that's doing, I think like that's a concern for people. So if they're voting against something, is it more the thing or a referendum on something else? So, and then a lot of people said you have people didn't know about it. They didn't know about the dates. So I think there's a multiple of factors, but I think messaging, whatever the number is, it's super important here. And, you know, if we want to support the good things that we're doing, then you got to say that. The other thing too is that 1 month ago seems like a long time, right? So a lot of things have changed, you know, just in terms of like masks come off, students are happier, like there's a lot of things to celebrate too. And I think like that should all be kind of messaged along with this is the number that we have. And that's just, I think that's quite important. It should be part of the conversation when it comes to like saying, hey, this is the number, this is why, but this is all the other things.
Thank you. I think it's true. Yeah.
I want to interrupt. I think Steve has a question in the chat.
Steve has a
I
question.
believe that's Steve.
Steve, are you there?
I think it's more to Laura. Right there.
He's asking if
Yes,
we
I
can
am.
get that. Yeah.
Yep, I am here. That $322,000 note, and it clearly states that's an error in there in regards to Sheldon. Can we, is that included in our numbers? And can we get it out of there? Because I don't understand. Basically,
It was a revenue adjustment. So they, in the shift from a reimbursement model to a sentence model of funding for special ed, they count based on how many students you have. And so when they were doing their calculations, they were counting Sheldon students. And they told us we would get a certain amount of money. And we knew it would be less than previous years, but then they told us that they made a mistake and they were counting Sheldon students too. And that revenue needed to go to Franklin Northeast rather than to us. So that's
Okay.
where the adjustment, so we lost $322,000 in revenue that we anticipated.
More than what we were already going down.
Right.
Right.
Well, and the problem is I don't see the formula, you know, so I just get a number.
Or agency that have been understaffed for so long.
So what we are looking to do this evening is to choose a direction to have, if we are splitting, if we're doing a third option here, Laura would need to do some, maybe go to the back of the room so we're not talking at her, and come up with the information, because we would hope to, in our timeline, so that we have a budget before May. We want to adopt the budget tonight.
So I heard Peter say he supported ag, and I think he said he was not opposed to keeping special ed. Did I misrepresent you?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, go ahead. Did you say cut special ed?
I said that, how long can we keep positions that we can't fill?
Toby, you had a comment, whether we could do a third option.
But on top of that, Laura explained that we're not talking about specific positions.
Right.
We're talking about, normal years, we end up with positions we can't fill. So when we say these two positions, the way I'm hearing it, we haven't been able to fill it for 2 years now or more.
That's why we're identifying those.
Right.
Right.
If we found one though, we could fill it.
But we have to
Because we know that we may have others that we won't be able to fill.
Correct, but it's a timing issue. So
So,
these are positions that we have historically not been able to fill. But if tomorrow, 5 special educators were all hired, and, then we would look at principals and say, well, okay, so now one other position has to be frozen, right? So we would have those conversations.
I would support, that's probably what Toby was gonna say. I would support 1.5, we got 1 and 2. I would support 1.5 where we eliminate 1 position instead of 2.
So the motion is that we cut 1 position to, is there a second to that?
Well, so if the timeline, are we adopting a budget tonight, Don, or no?
I think we need to.
Yeah, I think we
Right,
need to,
right,
so that.
right, but so you're asking for a motion though on the position, and then we'll do a number on the budget?
No, what I would be saying, and I really wasn't making a motion, I will, I don't mind. But my position would be number 2, but only cutting 1 position instead of 2.
So Toby, I think either we have a vote tonight or we have a special meeting. Because we don't want to be voting on this budget in May and then 30 days and then it's July. So I think tonight is key.
And if we want enough time for absentee ballots, it's tonight, because that's a 3-week turnaround.
Right, so I'm on the same page as Peter, so if Laura can come up with the number, I would be prepared to make a motion based upon the number, because we'll need the number for the motion.
Correct.
But we're gonna need 5.
It sounds to me like we're doing a compromise between 1 and 2. If we don't want to talk about positions, it's like we're talking about compromise somehow between option 1 and option 2.
By bringing up positions, it doesn't mean those positions are the ones, but they seem to be a couple who have been most difficult to fill. So we're talking about 1 or 2. And Laura, if this is going to take time, we can move on to other things and come back to that.
All right.
You're all ready.
I personally hope we don't go as deep as 7% or 7.8 or whatever it is. I'd rather see something in between what we asked for first and that. I think that's cutting way too quick to the quick.
This would be, if it's 1 position, so between scenario 1 and 2, it'd be 7.61%. Spending for equalized people would be 16,428. And your budget would be $40,767,254. put that into that spreadsheet quickly.
Do you know what the tax rate would, you gotta look at, that's another spreadsheet.
No, it's the one I just have to put in here.
I think because the state legislature requires we do it this way, people are focused on the equalized pupil.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, Peter, if that was behind your thinking, but it seems like the last couple of meetings, that's been a discussion of we need to, even though it's a fallacy and it's unfortunate, that is a number of people look at.
Jamie.
All right, yes, go ahead.
I'm here.
Joanne, are you up there, Joanne? Joanne, you know me well enough, say, hey. Go ahead.
To piggyback on what you just said, it is really unfortunate because I have to say that, I mean, I spoke to a few people just the day before we voted, and just to read the article, when you haven't been to any of the informational meetings, even if you haven't read anything from the messenger, it doesn't matter. Just to read that article, you don't know that your taxes and for Franklin, it's only going to go up $36 for every $100,000. You don't know that. You see 9%, and that's it. You just see 9%. And I do agree with Peter, you know, and I also agree with Terry.
I'll agree with Peter.
And I also agree with Terry too. Like, you know, we shouldn't justify what our students or our teachers or staff needs. But it's unfortunate that we haven't been able to, or maybe the public, I don't know, maybe it's not our fault, maybe it's the public's fault for not doing the research and really finding out what they need to know, you know, that 9% isn't necessarily as big as it actually is. So I don't know, can we submit our own article to the messenger? I know we did 4 pages.
I was gonna say we did.
No, I know, and I don't know who said it. Maybe it was just too much. It was just a little bit too much. But
I did write a letter to the editor because I
Yes.
spoke with Emerson because I wasn't
Yes.
particularly happy with the coverage that we received. Because I believe that it focused on one part of the budget, but it never spoke about the tax rate that was going down.
Right.
So that's why I wrote, Emerson suggested I write an article, not an article, but a letter to the editor, where a lot of people read that information just as carefully as they read another article that has part of the information in it. But I think my hope was to clarify some of that. I have been invited, I can do more of that as well.
I'm just trying to think of the best way.
And I think we need to lead with the tax rate a lot. And the common level of appraisal was a tough one for people because it was a big adjustment in all of our communities. Our equalized tax rate went down 6 cents. If that was the story, that wouldn't have been a problem at all. But the story wasn't that because our housing prices are, you know, our houses are selling for greater than assessed value because people are coming in and paying top dollar for houses.
But it was only going up slightly over a cent at the higher
Right.
amount.
Yeah.
There were only 6 budgets in the state that were defeated, and the average increase to ed spending was over 5%. So that puts a lot of things in perspective, really. If statewide was between 5 and 6%, and only 6 budgets went down.
So the year before, we went down. When you go down, then you have to take and make up not only the growth, but then the decrease. That's where we're at. So anyway, we're back and Laura's given people the information. Do you, Peter?
Laura, I think the numbers you gave are wrong because I wrote them down and they're exact the same as, I think you gave us number 2.
I just updated it.
Oh, you updated the spreadsheet?
Yeah. I had to do
Also,
that.
number 2 is now.
Yes, I'll make a note and put the other one back in, but doing it live, I had to work with one of them. Yeah.
I didn't realize it changed. That's good.
Sorry.
All right.
Don, can I ask a question? Don? Chair, Mr. Chair. Okay, well, the question I have is, or maybe it's more of a observation. So Maple Run spends $2,000, about $2,000 more per equalized pupil than we do. So we're, the one we proposed. So I don't quite understand. I don't think our community is that different than their community. And, you know, when we talk about rates of increase, if you start off at 18,000, your rate of increase isn't going to be very high. However, you start off at 14,000, your rate of increase is going to be high. So I don't know. I just wish, and Joanne, you said this, it's like people don't have a chance to watch the videos or to read the messenger or whatever it is. And even if the messenger told about the taxes as opposed to 9%, then they still go in and they see that. So I don't know. It's just really hard that the way we have to word things. But there are a lot of people who aren't going to, even if we try to communicate our best, there are a lot of people who are just going to go into the booth, and that's going to be the first time. Pierrette has her hand up.
Well, I have a question.
Pierrette, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, who else has it?
Pierrette has a hand up.
Oh, Pierrette? Are you there?
Yeah, can I make a suggestion? I know that in Franklin, obviously the annual report came out. Of course, you got this great big book that nobody wants to look at except a few. And then there was a one page that came out too. And that one page was excellent. It showed, here's the budget, last year, this year, tax rate. It was all on one page, much more easier for people to understand. They didn't have to spend a lot of time looking at it. I thought it was great. It was, and I think that if we took that one page and you just put out in the stores, libraries, whatever, public places, but also you certainly want to hit some of those quick stops in Swanton, some of the quick stops in Highgate, the gas stations, whatever, and put a stack out in all those places because it's a quick thing for people to pick up and look at, and people just want to do something. They don't want to spend a lot of time studying it. Some do, but not very many. And I think if you do a quick thing like that, a one pager, and put it out there, I'm glad to help hand them out in different places if you need, but I just think quick and easy is the way to go. And I think you'll find at least more people will have the information.
Thank you, Pierrette. Okay, so any more discussion before we move a motion here?
Do we want to look at what the tax rate would be with that?
All right, Julie's asking, do we want to look at the tax rate or do we have enough information to make a decision?
Do you want to share, do you want them to make a motion and vote on that revised scenario too? Or do you have, what the impact to tax rate would be? And do you want to have that discussion at all before we move?
I think it's important to say. So we would go with this new figure and the new revenues that I've adjusted and the further reduction in the equalized people that I've made now that that's frozen. We would have a tax rate of 1.2698. That's the equalized tax rate. That would be a 7.9 cent decrease where we were at a 6 cent decrease before. After common level of appraisal, we would still be going down, even though the CLAs are going down in all of our towns, all the tax rates would still be going down. It'd be 3/10 of a cent, almost 4/10 of a cent in Franklin, 6/10 of a cent in Highgate, and almost 3 cents in Swanton. But it would be going down even after CLA. Prior to that, it'd be almost 8 cents.
You have just the quick $100,000 number for all three towns.
Yeah.
That's what people want to know.
She's good.
I have to say, I could in a minute, I can get that for you, but I have to say, I have heard feedback about the inequity between the towns after the common level of appraisal, which of course we don't have control over, but seeing some rates go down and one go up. The burden after that based on a $200,000 homestead caused some confusion too.
Right. That was one of the things we did here is, well, how come Swanton's is going down and ours is going up? And thinking that our tax rates were different, but they're not. We have one tax rate for education, but the CLA is what makes the difference in each town based on each town's,
Actually heard that from.
And watch the future when some of these $600,000 homes on the lake are sold this year.
so
Okay, I'm still back where I
You ready
was
to-
2 minutes ago.
Terry has her hand up.
Hey, go.
I'm really sorry, but I don't understand. Are we going to vote on 3 options? Or are we going to only vote on 2, or can we see?
I think we're gonna have one.
I can share my screen if you want to see the.
That would be helpful if we could see all 3.
We're gonna have one article, Terry, after we,
Right, after we finish, one article, catch it, thank
I
you.
don't have all 3 anymore.
No, it's okay. Just
The article is on the drive. We just gotta put the new
Yeah.
numbers in.
I
It's in
put
there.
the new, they're in the warning it is, it's just not on the ballot yet. There's a warning and a ballot. The warning is the new numbers.
Oh, I'm looking at the ballot. of course.
Terry, though, you wanted to see all the different scenarios again?
Right, the 3 options.
I changed one to what the new proposal was, so now there's only 2. Sorry, it's a little bit tricky to work at the same time.
Sorry.
Okay, so
You mean you changed the first proposal?
I changed the second one, actually.
Scenario 2 became a new scenario.
Right, so now we have 3. We have scenario 1, scenario 2.
Well, we got rid of scenario 2.
We don't have 3.
No- Nobody seems to want.
Oh, okay, we got rid of scenario 2. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Yeah. Can you see that, Terry, or no?
I'll turn off my video and put my face right up to it. Thank you.
Click standard.
It is not easy.
Terry, if you click the standard view, upper right.
I'm trying to share my screen, which eats up half my screen. Is that better?
Thank you.
So the top line 2 is the original budget that was defeated. Option 1 would be the first scenario that I talked about with the retirements and the few reductions and the increases in some revenues. And then option 2 is now the one that Peter, I believe, proposed, which is a reduction of 1 position above and beyond proposal 1.
It still says 2, but that's the numbers
Oh, sorry.
reflect 1,
I'll do
right?
1, sorry, yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm not that good.
So Terry, that's what we're talking about right now. That's the only thing really on the table.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Don and Laura. Thank you.
So that's a motion?
So I'll,
Go ahead.
The motion has to be the actual.
I'm basically gonna make a motion for option 2, which is a budget of $40,767,254, equalized pupil cost of $16,428, which is a 7.61% increase from the last budget.
So you heard what Peter said, and it's theirs. Toby?
I'll second it.
Toby seconds it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to, Laura, did you want to say anything?
I'm just wondering if Julie could print it. We do have to approve the formal warning also. We
Okay.
should actually read the warning. And I'd like to print it and have people sign it at the same time.
I can. I have the magic.
And so while you're printing, let's go for a vote. then. All in favor of the motion made by Peter and seconded by Toby, say aye or raise your hand. Robert, you're counting for me. And anybody opposed? Stephen, are you opposed? No, it's gone down. Okay, everybody. Everybody's in favor.
We do not have Terry's video.
We don't have who?
Terry.
I said opposed.
You're opposed and everybody else is in favor. So is that 6-1?
How did Jen go?
Wait, Jen,
Is Jen still there? Yes.
she's there. I didn't see a
And
vote.
you voted for it, Jen?
I didn't, I'm opposed.
Okay, so it's 5-2. 5-2, and any abstentions? All right, so that's the vote, that's what we're going with, and Julie hopefully can print
She's
it
gonna
out.
print the warning so we can formally approve that and I can have signatures.
Okay, all right, move on.
I thought we wanted to read it.
We do, we need to approve the warning specifically.
Yeah, well, she's trying to.
Oh, okay, I was just gonna read it.
So I was just looking, because, so now we need the warning and we need the ballot, I believe.
The ballot, I'll have to update if you're okay. These numbers will just be put, I had a sample in there of what a ballot will look like. It'll be Article 1 only. The new vote date will be, well, we're gonna go over the new timeline, so everyone is
So
aware.
then we would be right now, we may move back, let's now review a revised budget timeline in marketing. I think you've given us a schedule before.
I did, I tweaked it just a little bit.
Okay,
The other white is so small. It's on a different. So,
Want me to give it to Dawn to read, or?
can you see that on page to read it or no, just Article 1? Actually, we should probably read the whole warning.
okay, are we ready? Warning, special meeting with Cisco Valley School District. Terry, can you hear me? Can the people, Jen, can you hear me? The legal vote
Yes,
for the
thank you.
Cisco Valley School District consisting of the town of Franklin, town of Highgate, and the town of Swanton are hereby notified and warned to meet to transact the following business by Australian ballot in their respective polling places hereinafter named for each of the above referenced towns on April 26, 2022 at the polling places and times hereinafter listed. Article 1, shall the voters of the Cisco Valley School District approve the school directors to expend $40,767,254, which is the amount the school directors have determined to be necessary for the ensuing year. It is estimated that the proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $16,428 per equalized pupil. The projected spending for equalized pupil is 7.61% higher than spending for the current year. Said persons and voters warned are further notified that voter qualification, registration, absentee voting, and voter procedures shall be in accordance with chapters 43 and 51 of Title 17 Vermont statutes annotated. The legal voters of the school district are further notified that an information meeting will be held on April 25th at 7 p.m. at the MVU Library, that's Cisco Valley Union High School and Middle School Library, and virtually via Zoom for the purpose of explaining the budget items to the voters. The link to access this virtual meeting will be posted on the MVSD website. Polling places and times. Franklin Town Hall, 5336 Main Street, Franklin, Vermont, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Highgate Sports Arena, 243 Gore Road, Highgate Center, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Swanton Village Municipal Complex, First and Elm Street, Swanton, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It'll be dated today and signed by a majority of the directors, if not all. So
Motion to approve that?
that's what we need, is a motion to approve. Peter's the first, Toby's the second.
Can I ask something during discussion here, Don? Does this, what does this mean if we vote we're not voting to support the budget, but we're voting to support the wording of what was already decided? Or what does this exactly mean?
You are supporting the warning, which states the budget and the equalized per pupil cost.
Yeah.
And the increase of the equalized per pupil cost.
So yes, you're approving the wording of the warning because the previous vote passed.
Thank you.
Budget. Right.
That's wondering who seconded.
That was Toby
Peter
seconded.
Toby.
And Correct, I'm
See, I
taking
can
notes.
see them from here. You get close to Joanne,
You're blending.
I'm blending right in. And if Robert was voting, I would never see him. So that's the article voting on. So all in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? You got them all, Robert?
He's saying what up.
Steve, are you abstaining?
Did he abstain? It's hard to tell.
voted flat.
I'm afraid I might have to. I had to go put somebody to bed.
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
Unless you want to reread the motion, I will definitely.
Okay, 601 then? Okay, all right. What else do we need?
I just want to share the timeline just because I think it's important every chance we get, so that
Okay.
people know.
Yep.
So here is the revised timeline. I will order ballots tomorrow. Absentee ballots will go to the towns on the 4th. It's about a 3-week process. So if people are looking for absentee ballots, beginning of April would be the time to ask for those. We will get a warning to the messenger. We always print in our paper. That should be printed on the 13th. Warning will be posted, on the 15th. I'll get to the messenger on the 13th. We need to market this budget heavily, obviously, that we've talked about between the 15th and the 25th, or starting now through the 25th. Informational meeting will be April 25th at 7 p.m. at MVU, as the warning stated. Oh, Terry's
Here.
and
Speak up, Laura.
so the informational meeting will be 7 p.m. on the 25th of April. And that will be at MVU, and there will be a link posted on Zoom on the MVSD website. And then the revote will take place from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on April 26th in all the same locations in Franklin, Highgate, and Swanton. We will then have a 30-day reconsideration period that brings us to the end of May, and hopefully we will be all set after that.
So Joe, go ahead, Peter.
Laura, you said that you're ordering the ballots. Does that mean they'll be the ones that the machine will count?
Yeah, I think we talked about that at the last meeting, and it sounded like that's what was wanted. Consistent with what we did last time.
I think it's important we do that so it doesn't look like we're changing the process.
Correct.
Julie, what would be appropriate for Chris to put in his Wednesday weekly, yes, sir, and Joyce to put in there? So, and we don't need to do it tonight, but is it something you could come up with administrative?
Yeah,
team?
they all did. We did reminders for, to vote. We can't say, please support our schools. We're not allowed to do that.
We sent the one-page flyer too.
Yeah, we send those out. We do
I
that
knew
on
we did it before, but I
Facebook.
want to, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we need to get it out before vacation.
Yeah.
All right.
We will work with the board to have a video that I think will explain some of the concerns people shared around the budget and talk about, you know, the spending per equalized pupil and tax rate information and try and clarify some of those issues. You know, we did, I don't know how many videos we did before, 7, I think. So obviously we don't have time to do 7. But doing one that's shorter that we push out as we use Front Porch Forum, we use Facebook, we use our parent communication links. You know, I think it also helps, you all have been having conversations with community members, neighbors, people at the gas station. I think that that's important to continue to do. And we always put everything on our website, so if you can always point people there as well for more information or to call us.
This is a day and 2 days after go back from school vacation. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on the budget before we move to the next item on the agenda?
Jen has her hand up.
I don't hear anything. Anybody?
Jen DeSorger has, I'm sorry, Jen Chevalier.
Jen Chevalier, there, I see your hand. Your head goes down, but your hand. All right, go ahead.
Just two quick things. Are we gonna do Pierrett's one-page suggestion and stack them around? Because I love that suggestion. It's amazing. And 2, we're all done with the budget, right? Discussion for now, for the night. All right, then I'm going to say good night and go get some rest.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. And while we're talking, Pierrette didn't hear who made the motion, who seconded the motion.
Toby.
Peter and Toby. Peter first, Toby the second. Okay, moving on, old business. Somebody else? Jay.
Yeah, I just want to say something now that you've done that. Obviously, as Toby pointed out, the budget was defeated by 23 votes the last time out. The informational meeting that you had here, you had one person attending. I fear that you'll have one person come back the next time, although it may not be the same person that you had before. I know that in previous years, there have been attempts by the board, and I hate to tell Laura and Julie that it could be extra time out, but you've held informational meetings at the respective communities. And I know that in Franklin, I can say from personal experience, you've had a much bigger turnout than one. Highgate has been the same thing. Swanton, I believe, has been the same thing as well. If you sincerely want this budget to pass, I think you need to sincerely go to the communities and not expect the communities to come here.
Thank you, Jerry.
Discretion. And if I can be of any help in making that happen, let me know.
One other thing.
Joyce, go ahead.
Just to go along with what Pierre was saying about the one-page thing, because we get it in our mailbox in Fairfax, like every single postal customer gets that one-page flyer. So it doesn't rely on somebody picking it up at the store or at the library. So every single person gets it who has a postal, box or mailbox. And it's kind of like Joanne said, when you just walk in and you see that article with that percentage and you've got no other context, and at least if you get that one-page thing in your mailbox, it's quick, you look at it, it's really got that tax rate on there and what it's going to do to your taxes. And I just think that makes a huge difference for people. And on a larger scale, and I know it's not going to help this year, but I really think something needs to be done at the legislature about that article.
They are discussing.
And I think that's really, really important because that sets up, like a district ours, like you said, Don, we were low last year, it sets us up and to fail.
And I was told by a school district in Chittenden County, just happened to be talking to the superintendent there, that there are districts that put something else on warning.
I spent a good 3 hours today looking over warnings and I couldn't find one.
Burlington did it.
Burlington.
And they got a little bit in trouble.
It was the school, actually I said the superintendent, it was a school board member that told me that. From Burlington.
All the ones I could find, which was about 15 or 17 of them, they all had
There's
a
native business managers at finance sector.
Who's
at
that?
Burlington High School. Burlington School
Nate
District.
Lavery.
Nathan, yeah.
Yeah, he's a business manager.
Yeah.
Don, did you say there's a bill going through to change it, the wording?
There's a proposal, but what has happened to it, I haven't followed it.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. We had a feedback from a gentleman at Highgate, his name escapes me now. And I've reached out to our local reps occasionally, and some are quite responsive, some just ignore me. So I think it's kind of interesting. I think I'm gonna see if I can find the bill and find out how they feel about it. Because I
think it's a House bill.
It's in the House, okay, because I people ask me like, what the heck does that mean? And I say, you know what, don't pay any attention to it, it means nothing. Look at what if you're only looking at bottom dollar, just look at that little block on the piece of paper that said Swanton would have paid $29 less on a $200,000 house. Even though I don't think people should just be looking at that because they have to consider the services, but that's what a lot of people just want to know. And this year it was an easy answer for them in Swanton. You would have paid less.
Really, if you want to compare apples to apples and equity to like equitable services, you look at net ed spending. Prior to yield, prior to equalized pupil, prior to anything, you look at net ed spending. That's the number that really is the truth.
Did you talk in the past about, or anyone in the past that brought up bringing that voting outside of town meeting?
Yeah, I think, well, Enosburg has historically done that. They vote late. I don't know if they still do it anymore.
They don't now.
Yeah.
They used to.
Yeah. Before we move off budget, I think Jay made an excellent recommendation. When do we meet next?
April 6th.
April 6th. I'd like to have that on the agenda. I think we have to keep the one at MVU because we voted tonight.
Well, yes, and you need to have one informational meeting.
There's nothing that would prevent willing board members to go, particularly to Franklin and Highgate. Swan kind of sees the school as part of, not that it is, but we might not need to have one at Swan Elementary. We might have.
Before vacation, so the timing isn't great.
Well, one of the things that we could talk about is having people go to select board meetings in each town. Because that might be an avenue that's on camera that allows people to, let people know that and hope to get on the agenda and the three.
So let's, at the next meeting, let's discuss what our plan is going to be. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, Terry's got something on.
Terry, you're on.
Thank you. I just wanted to reinforce what you just said, Julie, about going to the select board meetings with that one page thing that we could talk about. Because the other thing is, if you have your select board on your side, understanding it, they talk to a lot of people on voting day. So that would be helpful.
On to item, Peter, budget, before we leave budget.
Just these meetings that we're talking about, that will work in Highgate and Swan, but that won't work in Franklin because they're not on camera. So if we want to get to the Franklin people, I think we need to have a meeting there. And like Mr. Harmon said, I think people will come out.
So next month, let's try to track it down, see who's able to go there.
Right, doesn't have to be everybody.
Yeah. Joyce will let us choose the school.
If you have your April meeting in Franklin, you could even maybe do something prior to, because I think you were talking about having your April meeting.
I know
in
where
Franklin.
Peter actually, not Peter, Peter's right here. Devin actually went and figured out an alphabetical rotation that would not have Franklin in April, but would have it in June.
I was just trying to save you another.
I know. I know.
You're more than welcome anytime.
But it's an idea we're going to discuss. I mean, I said, Devin was in my email at about 6 o'clock too, and I liked his thought, but just driving here, I thought of some other ways we might do it. So Devin's thrust here, focus, was to get us into the elementary schools. And it's going to pick a month and say, this is where you go. I think the idea is good, but I have something I want to share when we get on to other business. About 30 seconds. So to do that. All right, we're on to number 8 on the agenda, old business. We agreed last month that we would have put this back on the agenda. A, Babcock design consideration. That was consideration of $225,000 SF to do a study of Babcock, assess the Babcock.
Well, it's more than an assessment. We have an assessment. This proposal
This is the EEI.
The EEI proposal. They did an assessment for us, but this would be a much deeper, much deeper, right?
So I think that last time I was the one that made the motion to do it because it wasn't on the agenda. It was determined that we shouldn't take action spending money, which I agree. So it's back here tonight. What is your pleasure?
Do you want to make the motion again to, for the purpose of discussion and see if there's a second?
I thought I'd wait to see if anybody else did because I'm the only one that's going to vote for it. Nobody does.
I'll be happy to make that motion.
Terry's making that motion. Is there a second to that motion? Nobody's going to second the motion. Motion going to die.
Steve is seconding it.
Who is?
Steve.
All right. Thank you, Steve. All right. Any questions? Any further discussion? Terry?
Yeah, I would like to, I was a little bit behind on this, and I had a hard time hearing last time, but then I started thinking about it. I know I think some of what prompted this is that we have a certain amount of ESSER funds. And so we had talked about it going to to Franklin. And I think that's great. I think Franklin needs the renovations, et cetera. But I guess I would say if getting Swanton set up, Babcock building, at least getting them set up while we have some money, I think would be really important as we're improving all the schools. We've done Highgate, we're going to do Franklin. I think Babcock needs to be done. And I think that if it's going to cost us more than 10%, let's say, of the ESSER funds to do the Babcock building, then yeah, maybe we shouldn't do it. But if it's 10% or less, I think we should do it. You know, because I don't think it would be taking, I mean, I guess what I'm suggesting is we don't do the major Cadillac, you know, over in Franklin, that we do something really nice and that we still have some left over for Swanton to get that study done so we can at least have it ready to go when we need it to go. I just wanted to say that because I know I'm not on the facilities committee and people are on the facility committee, and I know you probably already discussed this, but I just want to bring that up because I think that's something really important to think about.
Thank you, Terry. And I will make one more pitch and then we'll go to a vote. But one of the reasons that I wanted to do it is that there is still some discussion in the legislature about construction aid. Whether it goes anywhere this year, we don't know. I mean, nothing sure. If you've ever been in the legislature the last 2 days, nothing certain. But if we don't get it, then, and it's discussed, and there's a possibility that when it comes back next year, particularly if the state department, or I guess it's now, yeah, State Department, Agency of Education, gets construction money, we would have a document to say, these are the things we need to do to build that building to the level we want it to be. If we don't have that information, then I think we're a little bit, we're not ahead of other people. We may not be behind them, but we're not ahead of them. So anyway, any further discussion before we call for a vote? Peter?
So this is, we talked about it before, this is a design construction, right? This is no construction here. This 225,000 is a plan. Right?
Yes.
To get us a plan.
It includes up to, you know, bid preparation, et cetera. So it's permitting, et cetera.
So we just passed the budget. Where does so we haven't had any action on this, so this isn't in the budget. So where does it come from?
The motion that we made for the Franklin study and design, I would, you know, this would be contingent on our ESSER grant approval.
Right.
Because it's the same as the Franklin one. If, you know, they have said a few things, they've said, yes, it would be approved. Maybe it would be approved. We're not sure, you know. So it really is about how you write it and whether, you know, in the end, we will do everything we can should the board approve this motion. But if it is not approved in our ESSER to be funded, then I think the board would have a different discussion.
I would say Franklin probably be the first one we voted on, and also because it's a smaller amount. But
How long does it take before we find out we voted on this?
Could be a few months.
Months.
What I'm concerned about is the language that they use, and I'm trying to work with the EEI around the study. If it's in this, I'm concerned that a certain level of this, a good majority of the costs in this 225, just like in Franklin, is going to cross a line that when you get into actually like creating specs, architectural drawings, permitting, and creating plans and going out to bid and bid docs, that is not a study. That means you've decided what you want to do, and I have a feeling they're going to tell me that needs prior construction approval. Just the getting set up for that is what won't need it. You know, Franklin's a little more palatable because it's smaller dollars. This I'm just a little concerned about, but we can try the same way. I just, as long as it's contingent on grant funding, because I don't think I will have any. There won't be any other money to go to.
Right.
okay, so you've heard the motion, you've heard the discussion. All in favor of pursuing the Babcock design consideration, say aye or raise your hand. Oh, Peter, whoops.
I just want to make sure that I don't know what the wording of I just want to make sure it meets what Laura's saying. That
same wordings we used last time for Franklin.
Which was approve the Franklin. So this time it would be the Swanton Babcock space allocation study and design contingent upon ESSER fund approval.
Okay.
So back for the vote. Those are in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And Robert, have you did you get the number?
There are 2 online.
2 online, okay, so is it 6-0 or 7-0? 7-0?
6.
Jen had to.
Oh, that's right, Jen went, okay, all right, thank you.
Jen went to bed.
Jen went home. She was home. All right, we have a policy. Julie, would you review that for us?
Sure. The Board Goals Committee looked at it. It is, this is the first reading. I don't, typically we make a motion approving the first reading of the warning. It is federally and state mandated policy. COSHA and all the administrators have put all of the activities. There will also be separate school procedures that are attached to this policy. But it is on all of the activities that schools engage in and will continue to engage in to inform and get input from parents on educational issues and Title I expenses. It's very detailed and very prescribed.
So this is the first reading.
This is the
No
first
action
reading,
necessary.
except we usually approve the first reading.
Okay, all right, a motion to approve the first reading as requested.
I will make the motion.
Ruby, Joanne, I saw you this time, see, I'm on. All right. See, you're sitting with the administrators, I've kind of ignored them if you know. After they gave their speech.
You made
Okay,
that fly over.
all right, all in favor of that motion that's seconded by Joanne, say aye, or raise your hand.
It's like 6-0.
6-0. All right, superintendent's gonna notify us of all these new teachers that we're gonna get.
I just want to say that as challenging as it is for all the principals to work incredibly hard to hire, and these are the positions that you have in this chart at this point. These are people we knew already because contracts have not come back yet, right? So we will continue the hiring season through the spring. But I love the fact that I meet with every person and I will drop things on a dime on a Friday at 5:15. Oh, you're available? Okay, no problem. Let's get on Zoom. And I have the most, because they're not nervous. They know they're being moved forward and there's not a room full of people. It's just me. And I ask them, why do you want to come to Swanton and be a librarian? Or why do you want to teach math at MVU Middle School? And I have some set questions I ask, and they're just, this is a remarkable group of people, I just want to say. We've got some really good folks. So given that, we would look for a motion to hire the teachers on this list. We have Cassandra Dramlu, a new school counselor for Highgate. Autumn Bayor is returning as a classroom teacher in Highgate. Megan Barrett is going to be an SLP in Highgate. And Kaylin Bissett, a classroom teacher in Highgate. Swanton, we have Cameron Nielsen coming to be a phys ed teacher in Swanton. Joanne Allen to be a librarian in Swanton, and Karen Fitzgerald to be a librarian in Swanton. We have Ben Pagliaro, middle school math teacher at MVU. Jonah Moose, a high school math teacher at MVU. Jalen Collins, a middle school math teacher at MVU. And Rachel Hoff, librarian for MVU.
From that many librarians.
Yes.
For you.
Good for them. They've been working hard.
And Julie, I really appreciate you doing that for the board because I think it's important, at least we know the names. It would be really great, and maybe we do this in September, but for us to see faces, if they're certainly made known that they're welcome to come in August or
That
September.
would be great. Highgate used to do that. And so
We always did that.
it'd be nice. There'd be a lot of them, but it'd
And
be
they
nice.
also know who the board members are. So, okay, that's great. So you've heard the listing. Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation?
I will make the motion to.
Toby is the first. Joanne, thank you. You're the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. All right, Robert's helping me out. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? 6-0? 6-0. All right, thank you, Julie. Anybody ever say to you? Well, I'm not talking with you, I already have the job. All right, looks like we're up to board goals. Is that Terry?
Yes, and I'll tell you what, I think we can wait till next month, given the time, unless someone else on the committee wants to say something.
Good.
I would like to thank Kosha for giving us a great presentation.
You want, is it something we need to do?
I'm gonna have everybody sign in the morning. She's just printing it again bigger because it's very small.
Why don't you, I thought there was a comma on the period or something. It might be, maybe my eyes are that good. Might have been a fly line.
Did you make it larger?
I did.
Okay.
All right, so future agenda items, Mr. Martin, we tell the administration or suggest to them and administration at the building level, central office, things we'd like to go about. And so the one that got dropped off was because of the police chief. We're waiting on that, right?
Yeah, I think what we may do, I'll talk with Dane and Jay about just having our local SRO come and share, because the police chief is pretty darn busy. Yeah.
And where did personal learning plans go?
You know what, I will, I'll talk to.
Because we were going to do, when we do the guidance thing with,
Yes, that one, we are going to be doing,
I mean, it's not that we aren't
the
busy.
post-secondary outcomes and have apprenticeship information, college enrollment information, and PLPs in May now, because we're moving the proficiency discussion, because budget was so long. We knew that there's interest in that presentation.
I know we have a lot to do with.
It's not really a
with the
discussion,
budget.
but it's a presentation.
Good. All right, so I think we've got our next agenda meeting date.
Don?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
So just on that topic, for like future
Future meetings, yeah.
one of the things I think is going to be important to start seeing regularly, maybe not every, twice a month, but maybe once a month, it would be like the ESSER 3. It's a really big number. I know it's going to be a hot topic in the coming months.
We
maybe.
have,
So-
we have a budget that's going to be put out to the community, and a whole process that'll be coming out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is an
Yep,
expectation.
hear about it before the community.
Well,
At the same time.
a lot of information in your budget is also part of the plan.
And thank you for speaking up, Joanne. I know I've kind of jabbed you, but thank you for speaking up, because I'm not used to running meetings. I mean, I've run a lot of meetings, but never where I have that. So I could easily not forget you and
Just
not see you.
Also, something else we do, I know Terry wanted to go ahead and skip, but we did mention a retreat. So this summer, I think it's something that we need to just decide. So maybe next month or the next board meeting, if the board wants to decide if we are going to do the normal summertime.
Okay. Summertime meetings, our strategic planning meeting, or whatever we call it, retreat that we want to do. Okay.
Don, on future meetings, and I don't think this needs to get on there, but last time I brought up having students come in with their achievements, so I just wanted to make sure that's still on track.
Right. Part of the conversation that Devin and I have just started to have is, and I know you said he proposed a rotation, and you said you've got some ideas, but part of that would be, we would like some student participation of one sort of another in that, because I think it brings people to the board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a few minutes. Devin suggested that we take a month, and that during that month, those two board meetings would be in the same town.
Right.
And then we would do, and I can't remember exactly his order, but it didn't make any difference. I thought we would talk about the order. So he says April in Highgate, May in Swanton, and June in Franklin. Personally, I would start in Franklin and come to Highgate, And what I'd like to suggest is that in Swanton, we have one meeting and we have a meeting at MVU. I, as a board member, have always enjoyed the first meeting in June at MVU. And since Mr. Hartman might not be with us after that, I would like to see any final remarks he'd like to give us, but I'd like to hear from the high school. I know there are things going on everywhere, but I would like to see, I would not like to see us not come back to MVU between now and the end of June. And so whatever, but I guess what we need to decide is are we going to take a month and say this month we're going both meetings at the same time? Is that the concept that you want? Because the other concept is we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you get us on a rotation.
I think one thing that we could talk about is we could do something between now and the end of this year, between now and June, one way. And then starting in the next school year, we could do it.
Right, absolutely.
Because one of the points that Devin tried to make in his suggestion is that people don't necessarily want to drive to Franklin in January and February. So he sort of backed up. We typically do it just alphabetically by, Franklin, Highgates, MVU, Swanton. We do that rotation.
We don't mind driving.
I know. You can always be hybrid, Joanne.
Well, if you need gas or groceries, you're gonna have to.
But going back to something we talked about earlier with Mr. Hartman, it would make sense that if we want to do something in Franklin, that we have our April board meeting in Franklin.
Well, right. We could do we could do one meeting in Franklin and one meeting in Highgate in April if you really wanted to, because then you would be getting both towns in April.
So I guess tonight, not to belabor this, let's decide where we're going to meet next time. Where we're going to meet next time, and then come in and say, yes, Mr. Chairman, will be Devin. We'd like to stay in wherever we go first. No, we don't like that. We want to rotate. Peter.
For selfish reasons, I'd rather we didn't have the next meeting in Franklin because I'm going to be away and I'll have to be on Zoom. So
Did we need you? Are you saying you're
I'd
back
like to be able to walk the one.
I'm away too, but I'm not with Peter. Just to make that clear.
So would you say the second meeting in April would be good to have in?
And we may want to change that date because that's during our school vacation. Our regularly scheduled second meeting in April is the 21st.
So we usually back it up a week.
Correct. So we'd have back-to-back meetings, but we'd survive it. We use it for budget marketing.
We would do the first and third, right?
It is the first and third now.
Okay.
So,
That's the beginning of the vacation.
yeah, the vacation is the third week of April.
Maybe the first and second.
Okay. All right. So where are we going? The first Tuesday of April.
We could do Highgate.
Highgate? I think that's fair for Yesha. He's not here tonight.
That's usually how appointments on the board have that backup.
When we go to Swanton, I was going to talk to Chris about how we're
So
going to.
unless somebody says no, we'll be in Highgate on April
6th.
6th.
5th.
5th? Okay, April 5th, and that's great. There's a lot of new board member officially on board in Highgate. We'll go to Highgate.
There we go. That's fine. We'll use that.
And then we'll decide when the April meeting is going to be, and we will be in Franklin. And then we'll decide from there, if we're still speaking to each other. All right, okay.
I want to be on the committee.
Absolutely. You can talk that.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about committees and get things going. The budget threw us a little curve. Usually we would get the committees going. The committees are facilities. There's goals. And there's finance. Goals is probably the one that needs some. That doesn't mean I can't go to it.
I guess we can say next meeting.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
So we're gonna need a motion going to executive session. I think that's it.
Okay, a motion to go into executive session and the findings of our personnel and a contract
It's
matter.
a contract discussion.
And we want you, right?
Yes, do you want Bonnie to come as well, or she doesn't have to?
You don't have to.
I have
You want to be there?
I have a stuff.
She's a star. She's a
I think, I mean, you're welcome to stay, but you don't have to stay.
I think you only need 20 days.
Okay, no, that's fine. And you want to stay?
For absentee.
I wouldn't want
Other entitled.
I don't need to, Bonnie.
You know, how the superintendent, I used to say to them.
It's not too late now.
Go home. You know, if you want to stay, you're welcome, but go home.
Did you log in?
Accepting Ron helps a lot.
That's why it's.
Yeah, you guys are doing
They're-
Why don't?
Justin and Ron, they don't, they can tackle on that.
Oh, they don't drink us. Okay.
But your recommendation probably.
Lucia, are they, they're not related to Sophia Lucia? Are they?
You can't have it going during executive. Oh, I'm gonna lose board members.
You can make a,
I
I can
have
make
to
a new one. real
I
quick.
have to get, hold on, I'll log in.
Okay, so we have to use Zoom board members, which is a little wrinkle, but we'll make it work.
Carry that
You can
laptop.
take that, but do you want to
No, I don't.
kick out
I'm just trying to work.
everybody else? It's just.
I was trying to figure out who wanted to be here.
I'm back. I can sign something on Friday.
No.
Okay, so
Carrie, I can send it to you through DocuSign, I think. Is that okay? Yep.
Thank you, Jay, for attending. And Christian, thanks for coming.
If you could hear, I'm removing you for executive session.